Now then, hello folks and welcome back to my video gaming channel, Retro Gamer Diaries. 1983, now that's a year that I'll always remember as a retro gamer. I was a 13-year-old school kid who was absolutely obsessed on video games, both at home and in the arcades. It was at that time where home computers were booming, and that fella Sir Clive Sinclair was selling bucket loads of those ZX Spectrums. There were so many brilliant ZX Spectrum games. Manic Miner, Jet Set Willy, Ant Attack, Death Chase and so on. Blimey, I played so many of these games across all the home computers of the 80s, not just the ZX Spectrum but also the Auric 1 which I owned, the Commodore 64 and the Dragon. Just brilliant times. However, I wanted to talk about one certain game which for me stood out and totally fascinated me. It was a game like no other, and it wasn't just your typical platform or arcade shooter, but instead a game based on the life at school, and that game was Skool Daze. Yep, as a 13-year-old kid, I couldn't wait for that school bell to go off so that I could run home just like Forrest Gump to play a game based on, you guessed it, school life. Yep, 1983 was a brilliant year, it really was. Anyway, let's get started. Skool Daze is a computer game released by Microsphere in 1983 for the ZX Spectrum and then ported to the Commodore 64 the following year. It was written by David Reidy and graphics designed by Keith Warrington. Microsphere was a British software company formed in Muswell Hill, North London in 1982 by husband and wife team David and Helen Reidy. Microsphere was best known for several popular computer games in the mid-80s. Skool Daze is certainly the game that Microsphere is best known for, and I'm sure that it would have been heavily influenced by the fact that Helen had a background in teaching, while David had fonder memories of activities between lessons and designed the game around this. The characters were based on schoolboy characters David read about as a child, including Just William and the Beanos the Bash Street Kids. He later clarified that each of the rooms would look like a frame in a comic. David considered himself to be more proficient as a programmer and engineer and decided the game's graphics would benefit from a separate designer. And as a result, he recruited a family friend, Keith Warrington, who at the time was studying graphic design. Warrington learned the rudimentals of computer graphics from David and drew the characters as line drawings on squared paper. From this, he blocked in individual pixels to create an appropriate sprite with tracing paper to design the individual animation frames for each character. He later obtained a Spectrum to assist with the design, but he actually found using graph paper easier. Warrington actually said that he based the teachers on ones that actually taught him, and said that his geography teacher, Mr. Withit, was based on his all-time favourite teacher. He also says that he found the screen resolution limitations helpful, as it forced him to design cartoon-like characters, saying you couldn't do a normal person because they would have all looked the same. And with the other Microsphere games, David designed the program on paper, which Helen typed into the computer. So, let's embark on a nostalgic journey into the past with Skool Daze. Firstly, let's meet the cast, starting with the main character, Eric the schoolboy. Other than Eric, 3 of the pupils are also named. The first one is Boy Wonder, who's a bit of a tearaway. Then there's Angel Face the bully. And then there's Einstein, the SWAT. The 4 main teachers of the game are Mr. Whacker, the headmaster, Mr. Rocket, the science teacher. Mr. With It, the geography teacher. And finally, Mr. Creek, the history master. You also have the option of renaming the characters before the game begins. I have to say I like that feature. There are also many unnamed, undistinguished pupils at the school as well. And the computer controls all of these characters in the game, including the headmaster, other teachers and other pupils. So what's the story with our Eric? Well, it turns out Eric is a bit of a typical scamp of a schoolboy whose school report is due, and it's so bad that his parents cannot be allowed to see it. Therefore, the primary objective of this game is to retrieve that damaging report from the headmaster's safe. However, I have to say, achieving this aim is not so simple. In essence, to get the safe combination code, you must get all the school shields hanging on the walls flashing. You do this by hitting them with your catapult. Once they are all flashing, you must extract the code letters from the teachers, each one of which has been entrusted with one letter. This is done by knocking them over. Well, that is all except the history master who, because of his advanced age, has had his code letter implanted in his brain by hypnosis. Okay, that's not normal. And if that's not a challenge enough, well, this has all got to be done around the rigours of a typical school day. You must go to your class when the bell goes, or else it's detention, and the other kids will often play around to block you. And the game's artificial intelligence means that the events continue to unfold around you in the other rooms and corridors. And if Eric is caught out of class or otherwise misbehaving, then the teacher characters pursue him and issue lines. And when 10,000 lines or more are accumulated, the game ends with Eric's expulsion. However, Eric can also receive lines for things that are not his fault, such as lying or sitting on the floor when in fact he has been knocked down, or being nearest a teacher who has just been hit by a projectile fired by one of the other pupils. Flippin' egg. So part of the challenge of the game is to prevent other pupils from getting Eric into trouble. This may all sound involved and fun, and I have to say it is, but the bare bones of the plot don't even begin to explain how hard this task is. The kids are constantly bopping around, poking each other in the eyes, scrawling rude messages on the blackboard, tripping up masters and generally causing havoc for Eric. And the teachers, well, they're constantly handing out lines, ringing the bells to change classes, asking really daft educational questions, and generally just being like school teachers. I tell you, this really does remind me of my school days of the 80s. Wow. As I mentioned earlier, the game was also released for the Commodore 64, which came out in 1984. So let's have a look at both the Specky game and the Commodore 64 game running side by side. Overall, the C64 game is the same with regards to objectives and overall playability. The layout is slightly different but very similar. However, visually the colours are different. The graphics themselves aren't that terrible, but the use of colour certainly could use some work. That bright yellow does get a little bit nauseating after a while. For me, I actually prefer the ZX Spectrum appearance. However, it's still the same game though. So anyway, let's have a look at the Commodore 64 game. Well, there you go, that was a Commodore 64 game. Skool Daze was a commercial success when it was first released, selling 50,000 copies despite very little marketing or promotion. Reidy himself later realised that he could have made more money with an appropriate campaign and regretted the loss of income due to software piracy, but was still happy that the game was profitable and covered costs. The ZX Spectrum version was voted the 4th best game of all time in a special issue of Your Sinclair magazine in 2004. It was also one of the 3 Spectrum games listed in the 1001 video games you must play before you die. However, in 1985, Zap64 reviewed the Commodore 64 version, which they found to be graphically and sonically weak, but enjoyable to play due to the innovative gameplay. It was given an overall rating of 78%. Skool Daze is a game that's been recognised as being a pioneer of the sandbox game format, later used by Little Computer People and The Sims. It also reminds me of that game Bully that I played on the PlayStation 2. That game is very much influenced by Skool Daze. So, 40 years later, what do I think of this game? Well, for me, Skool Daze reminds me so much of my school life in the 80s. It has that authentic school experience where the game perfectly mimics the mundane aspects of British school life. From the disinterested teachers to the tedious lessons. I mean, it's all there. There's certainly very few games mirror players' lives on the ZX Spectrum as effectively as Skool Daze does. And what was also central to the game's appeal was the ability to interact with a vibrant cast of characters. Players could communicate with fellow students, exchange items and manipulate the behaviour of both teachers and peers to achieve their objectives. For me, this interaction totally elevated the gameplay. From the mere puzzle solving to this dynamic social experiment, it was absolutely brilliant at its time. For the creators David Reidy and Keith Warrington to have so successfully extracted the pure essence of a typical day at the 1980s high school is just a remarkable achievement. I was also impressed with the game's graphics and animation and sound. The characters, especially the teachers, are wonderfully drawn and animated. Despite the limitations of this era, the game manages to depict a bustling school environment. The whole playing area is alive with action, it really is. And the game does have that feeling of an animated comic strip, with the teachers and pupils' comments all appearing in balloons. Just brilliant. Okay, sure, playing the game does require a lot of attention to keep up with everything that's going on, but even if you don't feel up to a day at school, you can always sit back and watch it happen around you on the excellent demo. Wow, it's just like watching Grange Hill. So, for me, in summary, Skool Daze is a masterpiece of social commentary capturing the essence of school life in a fun and nostalgic way. Whether you're a seasoned gamer or just curious about the past, this game is certainly worth exploring. Skool Daze is just a fun game to play. I generally can't imagine anyone being totally disappointed with Skool Daze. I have to say I really enjoyed playing this game and recommend it to everyone with a sense of mischief. Therefore, I'm going to rate this game a 9 out of 10. Now, I'm pleased to say that the journey doesn't end here. Skool Daze was followed by a sequel called Back to School, and this was released in 1985. This game was only released on the ZX Spectrum and not the Commodore 64. The game differs from its predecessor by an increase in the size of the play area, including a neighbouring girls' school and a number of gameplay changes. The girls' school incorporates its own new characters, including undistinguished girls with hockey sticks, Hayley, which is the girlfriend of the main character Eric, and also Miss Take, the headmistress. Wow, Eric's done alright, he's got a girlfriend. Only at break time and lunch times are the girls allowed to mingle with the boys in the central grassy playground. Other times of the day it's separated by a high gate. And the opening and closing of this gate is controlled by the school caretaker Albert, a new character to the game. Now, it is also possible for Eric to sneak over this gate into the girls' school during lesson times, either by using the bicycle by watering the flower beside the gate and then jumping on it, or by kissing Hayley through the gate. Brilliant. And when the girls and boys are allowed to mingle, and when Eric finally gains access to the girls' school, he can kiss Hayley, who will then agree to do 1,000 of his lines for him. This reduction method can be used up to 6 times before Hayley refuses to help Eric anymore. Other elements added in Back to School include stink bombs, used to trigger the opening of the windows. There's water pistols, mice that can be released into the girls' school, causing widespread panic, and there's even sherry, which can be squirted in cups and used to intoxicate the teachers by splashing it on them with the correct timing. Back to School was a good game, and it was ranked 19th in the Your Sinclair official top 100 Spectrum games of all time. Now we come to the year 1999, and this is where there was an unofficial remake in Class of 99, a PC edition of Skool Daze with updated graphics and various changes to the gameplay. This remake of Skool Daze replaces the limited 8-bit graphics and sounds from the original with new enhanced assets while maintaining the same classic gameplay from 1985. Besides the overall graphical improvements, this version adds small touches like random weather and other special effects. Again, the player assumes the role of Eric, a school student in a desperate quest to erase that disastrous report file from the director's computer. Overall, it's the same game, but it looks prettier. And finally, we come to 2018's Skool Daze Reschooled. So what improvements have been made to the overall game? Well, as you can imagine, animation is a lot slicker, with more frames giving it that smoother look as you walk, jump, run and punch other kids in the face. I love the fact that the punches are also emphasised by a classic smack noise. It's absolutely brilliant, I love that. And the whole school looks a lot brighter. There's an in-game music, and you'll also find added to the top right hand corner a tab that you can slide out, which will tell you which and indeed whose class you need to be in. What I really like about this game is that all the original features have been kept in this new incarnation. I'm very pleased that they've done this. You can still write on the blackboards, punch kids willy-nilly, jump up and down like a loon, and you still get told you're not a kangaroo. Brilliant. Einstein will still tell lies about you, they get. This really is just an updated version of the original, which is what is needed. I mean, so good was the original, there really was no need to tweak with it and try to make it a different game, and the fans of the original will appreciate that. Of course, there does need to be something a little extra when it comes to a new version of a game, and with Reschooled, you are gifted a tutorial level. And this is where you are shown how to use the controls, how to complete tasks, and how to ride the scooter. Oh, did I forget to mention that there's a scooter involved in this time around? Yay! And we're not talking about one of these kiddie ones where you have to use your feet. No, we're talking about a bike with a motor in it. Not entirely sure why you would need a scooter in school, but who cares? It's fun. In addition to that, there's also included a remake of Back to School 2. That's absolutely brilliant. The sequel to the original has also been added to this game. Alternative Software have done a really good job here. Now personally, I'm not the biggest fan of remakes, but this genuinely is a great version of the classic game. It's not lost any of its original charm and has kept all the original great touches as well. And that's why this is a very good remake. You can also still get lost in the game for a few good hours like you could in the original, not caring for actually completing it, but just having fun. The appeal is still there like the original, with avoiding the bullies, hitting the class wall or the odd random kid, jumping up and down for no good reason, and maybe just attending the class if you feel like it. It's a very good game, highly recommended. So there you go. That was my video looking at the brilliant and very original game Skool Daze from Microsphere. This then led on to the sequel Back to School and then the remakes. All of them are brilliant and all of them follow the original formula set out in the original 1983 ZX Spectrum game. The game is nothing short of awesome. If you were a fan of the original, you'll love it, and if you've never played it before, you'll also love it. And what about Microsphere and that talented team? What actually happened to those guys? Well, the company's last release was the detective adventure Contact Sam Cruise, which according to David Reidy wasn't a commercial success, blaming software piracy for the lack of sales. And uninterested in developing for the emerging 16-bit computers and consoles, David decided to change careers and became an electrical engineer. Microsphere became defunct in 1987. Such a pity. Such a talented team, and I certainly salute David, Helen and Keith for producing such a brilliant game that stole many an hour from my childhood. The memory of Skool Daze will continue to live through the game Skool Daze Reschooled, and hopefully future remakes also. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, then please press the like button. However, as always, it would be obviously great for you to subscribe to my channel. And if you have already subscribed, then I must thank you. Spot on. Sticking with my channel, I will be bringing you many retro videos covering games from the early 80s right up to the modern games of today. Until my next video, have a great day and I hope to see you all very soon. Take care. Thank you everybody. Bye bye.